is it deals out 110 questions out of that 500. And so if we get enough people giving me questions, we can build a bank that maybe we can finally get all 500 questions of the PSI test, which would help us a lot. So when we talk about real estate license law in New Jersey, we're talking about New Jersey Legislative Code, Title 45, Chapter 15. That's what the law is called, Title 45, Chapter 15, known as the Real Estate License Law. And the Real Estate License Law, as all laws in New Jersey, is done by the New Jersey legislature. You can see here's a picture of our ex-mayor down here, Chris Christie. He's easy to recognize. He was very easy to recognize that day he was on the beach when he closed all the beaches. But here he is in the New Jersey legislature. They're the ones who wrote real estate license law in the 1930s. And of course, the law has been changed much since then. When you write laws, laws are written in what they call bare bones form. And then the Real Estate Commission is given the responsibility of fleshing out, filling in all the requirements and the individual regulations and fines and fees. And they're given the responsibility to promulgate the laws, it's called. The responsibility to promulgate the laws. And again, we still have some people joining here, so again, it just distracts me for a second, no big deal. All right, New Jersey's Real Estate Commission is part of the Department of Banking and Insurance. So DOBI, Department of Banking and Insurance, is the boss. The Real Estate Commission is part of DOBI. If you go onto the page for the Real Estate Commission, if you just Google it, it's going to give you all of the different sections. You know, licensing and education might be something that you might want to see now if you're looking through it. And print your New Jersey real estate license. Once you get your license, they no longer print out licenses. They used to print them out on a really special kind of paper like money is written on. And you know that would be your license. Now they just make them digitally, and it's your broker's responsibility to print your license out, and it's your responsibility to print out your pocket card. So again, eventually when you get your license, you're not going to get handed a copy of your license. Your broker is actually going to keep your license in their office, but if you want a copy, that's where you print it out. So this is the Department of Banking and Insurance website. The Real Estate Commission is part of the Department of Banking and Insurance. Somewhere down here, it doesn't show it's under my name, or the actions where they took, the disciplinary actions they took against people. And so we'll look at those one night too and see what people have been doing wrong. This is a slide that's left over from the other night. I did some research from our conversation, I guess it was last night, is what has to be disclosed. And somebody asked, do we have to disclose if somebody died in the property? And this is the answer that I got. Let's see, I got a comment here. I will text you a couple of practice test links. I believe they belong to PSI. That would be great. And I'll talk to you about whether you should pay to do that or not, whether it's a good idea. But what the research I found out today, and this is part of the, here's the reference for the code, is you're not required to disclose any physiologically disturbing facts about a home. However, the Supreme Court has found that a real estate agent would be required to disclose such a fact if it is so intertwined with the physical condition of the property that it must be disclosed. And an example is if someone died in the home as a result of toxic mold. So that's telling you that if someone just died in the home, that's not something that has to be disclosed. I'll give you another really important example. There was a house down the shore in New Jersey on the beach that had, it was several stories tall. And you know, those houses are up on stilts anyway to get them above flood level. So this house had an elevator, and in the house, the elevator had a tragic accident where 2 children in the household were killed in the elevator. And of course, the family couldn't live there anymore, so they sold the house. And the next people that bought the house, even though the elevator was fixed, the next people who bought the house claimed that they were injured financially by the fact that the house had been stigmatized by the elevator killing the 2 children. And so that would probably be an example of something that was so intertwined with the physical condition of the property that it must be disclosed. And that case is still kicking around the courts yet. So I don't know exactly how it, I don't know exactly how it's going to end up. The next thing it says is real estate agents must be truthful when asked about any deaths that occurred on the property. So if somebody asks you, did somebody die here, and you know that somebody died here, your answer should be yes. If you don't know that somebody died there, it's not your obligation to determine if somebody died there. And it is not a mere material defect unless it is so intertwined with a physical condition that it must be disclosed. So that kind of answers our question from yesterday. And again, it's one of those questions where we really say that it depends. And I'll do some more research into the case with the elevators on the beach house. And if we see anything over the next couple of classes, if there's any resolution, I'll let you know. All right, so that Title 45, Chapter 15, New Jersey's license law did create a real estate commission. The real estate commission has 8 members. The real estate commissioner right now is this person. She's a broker member, and she's the member since 2010, but she's only the president for a year or two. Here's another broker member, so that's 2 broker members. Here's another broker, that's 3 broker members. There's another broker member, that's 4 broker members. There's another broker member, that's 5 broker members. So there are 5 broker members on the real estate commission. And I think it's also quite revealing that out of the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are women. So all 5 of our broker representatives on the real estate commission are women. And I've been in the industry 30 years. And what I've noticed is usually most real estate agents are women. At one point, 80% of real estate agents were women. Men didn't really work this job, and this is going back to the 1970s and 80s. And most of the brokers were men. Now it's completely changed, and there's many men that are real estate agents, and there's many women that are real estate brokers. And right now, we have the situation where all 5 of the broker members on the real estate commission are women. That's something that I've never seen before, and it just happened to hit my eyes today when I went over it. So 5 members of the real estate commission are brokers, and they have to have been brokers for 10 years immediately preceding their appointment to the real estate commission. So all 5 of these women have been brokers for at least 10 years preceding their admission to the real estate commission. And there are 2 members that are public members. Public members are, again, Jacob Elks. He's a public member. That means he does not have a real estate license. The other public member is Carlos, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he does not have a real estate license. Those are people who are on the real estate commission who do not have real estate licenses. And then the 8th member of the real estate commission is called the governmental designee. And Denise Isles is the governmental designee. That means she is an employee of the state of New Jersey, and she is on the real estate commission. Okay, and she serves at the pleasure of the governor. Everyone else serves, has a certain number of years in their term. And they're not elected people, they're appointed people. Again, someday, maybe if everything goes right, maybe I can get to be on the real estate commission. These people all have put in their time and have all been on committees and have all worked for the realtors, been on realtor committees, and have all been on MLS committees. I'm a director on the Garden State MLS. I've never worked on the Central Jersey or Metro Century Realtors committees, but you know, it's a good idea once you get your license to be involved in the organizations that control our business. And all you've got to do is ask to be on a committee, and you can get on a committee. So you know, you might want to think about volunteering once you get your license and you get a little bit of business under your feet. Okay, so that's the real estate commission. Oh, we got another chat question here. Is John Elks the person who's representing the people in the elevator thing? Is that what you're telling me? That would be very interesting if you knew that already. That would be cool. So again, one of the things about the class is when we teach you stuff, it's not stuff that's just book learning. It's stuff that happens in real life every day.
Hey, Bruce.
Yes. You faded out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to turn off my share. That might give us a little more bandwidth. You guys might want to click off your video share, not your audio, to give us a little more bandwidth, because I didn't hear your question. So if you can ask the question again, maybe we have enough bandwidth now. Sorry, you might want to do it as a chat message, because I didn't get it. Sorry about that. I hope you can hear me. All right, the next thing we want to talk about is the types of licenses that the Real Estate Commission issues. And Sue, if you're there, message me that you can hear me, because let's make sure that we didn't lose the connection. So Sue, if you're there, if you could send me a message or a text even that says you can hear me. Let's just make sure that we're not leaving people behind. Okay, the types of licenses that are going to be issued by the Real Estate Commission, and basically there's only three: a broker's license, a broker salesperson's license, or a salesperson's license. Now, one of the questions that's going to come up when you get your license is, do you want to be an active salesperson, or do you want to be a referral agent? An active salesperson can list and sell. A referral agent can only refer. The difference being that a referral agent who can only refer does not have to take continuing ed. And thank you, Sue, I got your message. Thank you very much for the help. Who does not need a real estate license in order to get paid for doing a real estate related activity or transaction? Well, an owner does not have to have a real estate license to handle his own property. If you're a landlord, you're a lessor, you don't have to have a real estate license to handle your own property. If you're a New Jersey attorney and you're acting in the auspices of your job as an attorney for certain types of attorney-client representation, you don't have to have a real estate license. Although a court case did determine that New Jersey attorneys cannot run a real estate-like business just because they're attorneys. They would have to have a broker's license. Who else does not need a real estate license to get compensated for real estate-related services? All persons acting in a legal capacity, and that is a receiver in a bankruptcy, a trustee in a bankruptcy, an executor in a will, an administrator in a will, and the sheriff in the sheriff's sales. They can get paid a commission without having a real estate license. And remember, when we talk about executors and administrators in the will, you have to remember that when you appoint an executor in your will, the executor is allowed to charge a percentage of whatever he liquidates as his fee for services. And if you die without a will and the court appoints an administrator, the reason administrators like to do this is they get to charge a percentage of whatever they liquidate in the estate for their services. Also, banks, trust companies, and insurance companies do not necessarily have to have a real estate license in order to sell real estate and get paid for it. Now, where are banks, insurance companies, and trust companies selling real estate? Well, what's happening is you might have a bank that has a bunch of foreclosed properties or is in the process of foreclosing, and they might sell it to another bank and get paid a commission for selling it to another bank. And in that case, under normal circumstances, since they're getting compensated by being paid a commission for selling those assets to another bank, they would need a real estate license. But we say that they're exempt, they have an exemption. So banks, trust companies, and insurance companies who are registered in the state of New Jersey do not have to have a real estate license in order to do that. And then also we have an employee who's engaged by the owner to manage properties. And so in property management, we talked about Schneider from One Day at a Time, and there's Ann Romano and her daughters, and there's Schneider. Schneider was a super, that's probably the term people call him, where he's not paid a salary, but he's given a free apartment for managing the properties or being the maintenance guy for the properties. So those are people who do not need a real estate license to get compensated for real estate-like services, to get paid something of value for real estate-like services. Activities requiring licensure is listing real estate for sale, selling, exchanging, purchasing, renting, or auctioning real estate. And you notice I've highlighted collecting rent, because collecting rent necessitates a real estate license. And as a matter of fact, many big property management companies have been sending their employees to the school to get licensed, because New Jersey is getting very strict on if you touch other people's money, you have to have a real estate license. So you're allowed to work in a office that's a property management company, like a big apartment complex, you're allowed to work in that office without a real estate license, but you can't collect the rent because you're touching somebody else's money. So again, that's one of the activities that requires licensure. Negotiating a loan to be secured by a mortgage in certain instances requires a real estate license on certain commercial loans or on seller financing. Selling a business that involves real estate, whether it's the sale of the building or the lease that the business is in, would require a real estate license. Selling lots for a developer, attempting to do any of the above. And again, we're going to always have to run a criminal background check on people to make sure they haven't committed one of those 5 crimes that makes it so they cannot have a real estate license. Qualifications for a salesperson. You guys are here for a salesperson's license. You're not here for a real estate agent license because you're not going to be the agent. Remember, it's the broker that's the agent. You're here for a salesperson's license. You have to be 18 years of age. You have to have a high school education or its equivalent. You have to take a 75-hour class, and that's what this class is. The law says you have to have at least 60% of the 75 hours logged in. You have to pass a state examination. The state examination is given by PSI. They are giving the test now. I repeat, they are giving the test now. And I'm going to tell you a secret about the test. The state of New Jersey instructs PSI to make the test harder or not as hard, depending on how many people they want to get licensed. And right now, it's in a cycle where it's not as hard. So we want to get finished with our class before they want to start making it harder again. I don't know what their criteria is to make the switch, but they do kind of influence how hard or how easy the test is. The next thing is you have to furnish evidence of good moral character. The way you furnish evidence of good moral character is, first of all, you answered those special screening questions with me, but you're also going to have a criminal background check done after you get fingerprinted. And you have to be sponsored by a New Jersey broker. Now, sponsoring by a New Jersey broker doesn't mean they're going to pay for you. Sponsoring by a New Jersey broker means that New Jersey broker is going to allow you to hang your license under his broker's license or her broker's license. And they're going to take responsibility for you. So not only does it enable you to work for them, but now they're responsible for what you do. And if you do something that causes you to get a fine, your broker can actually be also fined for failure to supervise. Qualifications for a broker or a broker salesperson. So the qualifications are the same for a broker or a broker salesperson. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is the broker is the one who has to have the office. The broker is the agent. The broker is the real estate agency. They're the ones that have the real estate office. A broker salesperson is someone who has met all the qualifications to be a broker, but does not want to have their own office. They want to hang their license underneath a broker's license. So I have a broker's license. My wife has a broker salesperson's license. So she has her license hung underneath my license. She gets mad at me. She can go open her own office just by upgrading her license from broker salesperson to broker. And she had to meet all the same qualifications a broker does. She's just chosen not to open her own office. You also have to be 18 years of age. You have to have a high school education or its equivalent. You have to have 3 years full-time experience immediately preceding application. No more than 20 hours a week in any other job. So I've had people who have been teachers and they want to get their real estate broker's license or broker salesperson's license. And they can't because they've been a teacher. I've had people who have been firemen. I've had people who for a couple of months put their license into a referral office, and automatically that ends their apprenticeship years that they built up and they'd have to start all over again. All right, so 3 years full-time as a salesperson immediately preceding the application. You have to take a 150-hour class. The 150-hour class is broken down to a 90-hour core course, C-O-R-E, and 2 30-hour segments, the first one being ethics and agency, and the second one being office management. You have to pass a state exam. And it is essentially the same exam as you guys get on your salesperson's test, except you have to have a higher score. And then there are a few questions thrown in there about office management and how to handle your accounts for your trust account and your operating accounts. Then you're going to get fingerprinted, and they're going to run a criminal history check. Now, even if you got fingerprinted when you got your salesperson's license, you're going to have to get fingerprinted again for your broker's license because they want to know if you committed crimes during the interim. Now, here's another trick. You have to be 18 years of age, but you have to have 3 years experience as a salesperson, and you can't be a salesperson until you're 18. So how can you be a broker at the age of 18? Well, you can be a broker at the age of 18 because if you were wounded or disabled in the line of duty in the military service, then you have a waiver of the 3-year apprenticeship program. All right. So again, after you pass your test at PSI, the next step is to get fingerprinted. You're going to get fingerprinted at Sergo Morpho. They're going to run a fingerprint check and a criminal background check through the FBI. If you've been fingerprinted to be a bus driver or fingerprinted to be a teacher or fingerprinted for something else, doesn't matter. You have to be fingerprinted again. Examination is given by PSI, and when you go onto the PSI screen, you're going to go down to the screen that says Government and State Licensing Agencies, and you're going to click on that, and then it's going to bring you to the state. You're going to click on New Jersey, and then when you get to New Jersey, you're actually going to click on the New Jersey Real Estate Salesperson Combo Test. The reason they call it a combo test is because in the old days, you used to take a test that was 80 questions for every chapter in the book except for chapter 3, and then you would take a test that was 30 questions just for chapter 3, and you had to get a 70% on each of them. Not a cumulative 70%, but a 70% on each of them. That's not the case anymore. Now there's 110 questions. You have to score a 70% or higher to pass. That means you have to get 77 correct out of 100. If for some reason you take the test and you do not pass, it's very important that you bring me your score sheet so I can tell what I need to help you on. And I do get messages from people they can still hear me. I appreciate that. The technology isn't always perfect, and I'm not really the best at using technology, so thank you very much for help. All right, so again, 110 questions, 70% correct, that's 77. I urge you not to panic. I urge you to take your time. It's a 4-hour test. You'll probably take between 2 and 3 hours. I know it's hard to concentrate for that amount of time. I know you're going to get panicked, but just relax. And again, you can use my techniques of rubbing your nose. That helps. Of changing your hand. So if you write with your right hand, put a pen in your left hand or a pencil and write with your left hand. Those are all things that help you to reconcentrate again and to turn your brain on again to find some of that lost information. And, people say, why do I tell so many stories about what happens in real life? The reason is every story I tell will help you to pass the test. If you can remember the story, it might give you an answer. So my real life anecdotes will help you. Many people say they can hear my voice when they're taking the test. So that's good. As long as you don't hear my voice in your sleep, if you hear it when you're taking the test, that's fine. Who does not have to take the examination? And I want to take that back. That's an incorrect slide. This should be waiver of the test. Who does not have to take, the waiver of the class? Nobody gets waived for the examination. So this is a bad slide. It should say waiver of the 75-hour class. So a person can get waived from the 75-hour class if they're a New Jersey attorney in good standing before the bar. You also get waived from taking the test if you have your license in another state that has 75 hours for their class. Now, New York has 60 hours for their class, so they don't waive New York. If you want to take get a New Jersey real estate license and you're from New York, they actually give you an opportunity to just add 15 more hours in New Jersey in order to be qualified for your to get a New Jersey license if you already have a New York license. But before they'll allow you to just take the 15 hours, they make you send a letter to the Real Estate Commission in New Jersey and outline your experience. You also don't have to take the class, again, the class if you majored in real estate in college. So you don't have to take the class if you majored in real estate in college. Yes.
What if that question, qualified applicants from another state, is reversed? Let's say New Jersey, we have New Jersey and we want to get in New York.
So all states are mean, and if New Jersey does not accept them, they do not accept New Jersey. And that's really mean in New Jersey because we allow New York people to just take 15 hours potentially and they could pass. But if we want a New York license, we have to take the whole 60 hours. So again, every state is different. There's 50 states. Every state is different. That's a good question though, because I can get waived from taking, if I want to get a Florida license, I can get waived from the education requirement in Florida for a salesperson's license, and I only have to take the test. But I can't get waived for the education requirements for a broker's license. So every state is different. Okay? Who else doesn't have to take the class? And again, this slide is wrong because it says examination. It really is class. Who else doesn't have to take the class? It's if you majored in real estate in college. And also, if you had a New Jersey broker's license within the last 5 years and you let it go dormant, you don't have to take the class to get your salesperson's license again if you get it within 5 years. If you let it go past 5 years, even though you were a New Jersey broker once before, you've got to start all over again from the beginning and take the class and get a salesperson's license. So those are the people who are waived from the class. Payment of fees. Your license is on a 2-year cycle. It goes from 7/1 of odd numbered years to 6/30 of even numbered years. So I'm sorry, and that's another typo. It goes to 6/30 of odd numbered years. So 7/1 of odd numbered years to 6/30 of odd numbered years. 7/1 of odd numbered years to 6/30 of odd numbered years. So all of our licenses, including yours if you get it, are going to expire on 6/30/2021. On 6/30 of 2021. And you get a license once every 2 years. If you get your license next week, it's going to expire on 6/30 of 2021. Now, earlier I said you're going to choose, when you guys get your salesperson's license, you're going to choose if you want to be a regular agent or a referral agent. If you're going to be a referral agent, your license has to be hung in a referral company. So in a company that only does referrals. Now I have a referral company. If you want to hang your license in a referral company, you can hang your license with me, but there's a lot of referral companies out there. If you're in a referral company, you do not have to take continuing ed. If you get your regular license, you're going to have to take continuing ed, and it's 12 hours every 2 years. And they have just changed the requirements. You need 6 hours of core courses, 1 hour of fair housing. They're making fair housing a very special initiative because of what's going on now, in the country and the new things that we are sensitive to, and then 5 hours of electives. So a total of 12 hours. 12 hours of continuing education. And you guys will not have to take the 12 hours of continuing education until sometime before 6/30 of 2023. So your license cycle that runs from 7/1 of 2021 to 6/30 of 2023, your license cycle for that period, your continuing ed is counted as this class. So this class counts as your continuing ed. So if you already have your license, you're going to need to get your continuing ed before 6/30 of 2021. And really, you're going to have to get your continuing ed before April the 1st, or April the 30th, I'm sorry, before April the 30th. Because if you don't have your license by April the 30th, they charge you an extra $200 for your license. So I will have a rush of people taking continuing ed on the beginning of the year. And they've changed the rules on continuing ed because of Corona. They're going to allow me to do my continuing ed classes live via Zoom. Before you had two choices. You could take them online, and there's a million places that give them online. But if you take them online, you have to pass an online test. Or you could take them in person, and we gave them in person. And if you take them in person, you don't have to take a test. So they're going to allow the online live Zoom classes, live Zoom like we're doing now, to count, and you'll be able to take your continuing ed without having to take a test. But you guys don't need it for another 2 years. Okay? And if you're a referral agent, you don't have to take continuing ed. If you're a referral agent and you want to change back to a normal salesperson, not just a referral agent, which means you could list and sell now, if you do that, you have to take your continuing ed for all the cycles you missed. So if 6 years from now you decide you want to be a salesperson instead of a referral agent, this class counts as your first cycle, so you don't have to take it, but you might have to take 24 hours to get your license back up to a normal license. And this is all a gigantic thing that they put together a couple years ago. I was on the groups that kind of put this all together. I would have liked to have seen more strict rules for continuing ed, but some of the very big companies that have thousands of agents did not want continuing ed. Again, I think continuing ed is a good idea because I see many people out there not knowing what the rules are once they get out of their 75 hours. We got a chat here again. Let's see what we got. Yes, you're right. So it should be 6/30/2021 on my slide. I need you to edit the slides, kiddo. Okay. Next is if you fail to renew your license, it can stay dormant up to, but it has to be done before, up to, but it has to be done before. You have to renew it before it gets 2 full years past its natural expiration. So let's say right now you wanted to not do real estate and you had a license and you sent it back to Trent. So that means it could sit in the dormant state all the way through the cycle of 7/1/2021 to 6/30/2023, but you had better turn it on before 6/30/2023. Because if you don't, if it's more than 2 years after its natural expiration, it's not renewed and you lose it and you have to start all over again. So a license can sit 2 years in a dormant state, but it has to be renewed before it's 2 years from its natural expiration. And again, I will get a bunch of phone calls in June of 2021 for people who are getting close to that happening, and they want me to turn their license on for just a couple days, and then once it gets into the new cycle, turn it back off again, and then they've got another full 2 year cycle that they don't have to worry about. So
hey, again, Bruce, how much is the renewal fee?
$100.
Okay.
Okay, not a lot. Again, if you are a wounded or disabled veteran who was wounded or disabled in the line of duty, you don't have to wait the 3-year apprenticeship program, and you don't have to pay for your license. You still have to pay for class, but you don't have to pay for your license. So you can get a real estate broker's license at 18. You go to serve in Afghanistan, you get wounded, you come back, and you've got a disability, you can get your broker's license without the 3-year apprenticeship. You can also get a temporary broker's license in the event of the death of the broker or the insanity of the broker. And some days, the picture on the right is exactly how I feel. There's days that are truly insane. But you can get a temporary broker's license. What that means is if you have an office and you have a bunch of agents in the office, but no other broker salespeople, just all agents, and the broker dies or goes insane, then you can apply to the real estate commission within 30 days of that event, the insanity or the death, and you can have somebody who just have a salesperson's license be appointed as the temporary broker. And you have to do it within 30 days of the death or the insanity, and then that temporary broker's license is good for 1 year. And during that year, that office is expected to either get that person their broker's license by having them go to class, or to hire somebody to be the broker. But what it does is it keeps you from having to close your office just because of the untimely death of someone. And there was a RE/MAX office that was in Spotswood called RE/MAX Across Town. And Margaret West was the broker there. Margaret West came to RE/MAX training with me when I first bought my RE/MAX franchise back in 2000. Her and I went out to Denver together. Really nice lady. She had a very nice office, and she just suddenly passed away. There was nobody in her office that had a broker salesperson's license. So her daughter came to me. Her daughter was a real estate salesperson, said, what can I do to keep my office open? And we showed her how to do this temporary broker's license thing. She made the application, and she was able to keep her office open for a year until she hired a broker. And she hired a broker, oh boy, almost remembered the broker's name they hired. But anyway, they were able to keep their office open. If you have a partnership or a corporation, and I own my office as a LLC, as a corporation, and I'm the broker of record. So if you have a partnership or a corporation, the broker of record has to be an officer of the corporation. And that's because only officers of a corporation have signing authority. So that means that I have to be an officer of Best Realty LLC in order to be the broker of record. So if I was to sell my office to someone, and that person just was an investor who was buying my office, if he wanted to have a broker run the office for him, he would have to make that broker an officer of their corporation. The next thing is, if you are living in another state, not New Jersey, you can still have a New Jersey real estate license. But if you're living in another state and you have a New Jersey real estate license, you must sign and supply an irrevocable consent of service to the New Jersey Real Estate Commission. And what that means is, if you live in Florida, and remember, the Real Estate Commission has the right to subpoena you. So if you live in Florida and the Real Estate Commission wants to subpoena you, they don't have to go down to Florida to serve you. All right? You automatically agree to the service. You automatically agree to the subpoena. So again, for non-resident licensing, you must supply an irrevocable consent of service. And the next thing is no license lending. And I have a friend who's in Florida, Jeff Levine. He used to be one of my office managers, and he has a New Jersey broker's license that's right now just dormant because he doesn't have an office in New Jersey. And he has people all the time asking him if they can use his broker's license to open up an office in New Jersey. But he lives in Florida, and that's what license lending is. If he's living in Florida, he cannot be a broker of record of a New Jersey office. That's license lending, and it happens all the time. People want to open up an office, and they didn't pass their broker's license test, or they didn't have the time to take it yet. They want to hire a broker of record that's license lending. And I want to tell you that it is truly remarkable when you are starting a business, how little money you need to start a real estate brokerage. Now, if you want to start a RE/MAX office or a Keller Williams office or a Century 21 office, you're going to need 6 figures easily. But if you're just going to start a mom and pop office, you could start a mom and pop office for $1,000. Maybe $1,000 to $2,000, but for very little money. So it's amazing the threshold of entry to allow you to have the opportunity to make so much money. And the same thing with your licenses, by the way. The threshold of entry is coming to my class, and then $100 for your license and $60 for your criminal background check. Well, all of a sudden, for not that much money, you've got a real estate license, and you look at Robert Dukansky, who's making $2 million a year as a real estate agent. People who go to medical school come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of student loans. We come out with less than $1,000 to get a real estate license and have the opportunity to make money. All right, again, the Real Estate Commission has the right to refuse to issue licenses to people who have been convicted of burglary, forgery, theft by deception, or other like money offenses. There is a law in New Jersey called the Rehabilitated Convicted Felons Act that says you have the right to a hearing, so you can appear before the Real Estate Commission and tell them why you should be able to get your license. And those who are convicted of these crimes under any circumstance cannot get their license back within 5 years. So if you've been convicted of these crimes, you cannot get your license back for any reason within 5 years. Maybe never. And I do know a couple of people who have approached me that wanted to get their license that had been convicted of theft by deception or securities fraud, Series 7 conviction, and the Real Estate Commission is not allowing them to get their license back. A very tough break, but that's the way it is. Again, if you're convicted of any crime, once you have your license, you have to let the Real Estate Commission know when you've been convicted of a crime. If you are charged with one of these, you have to let the Real Estate Commission know within 30 days that you've been charged. Not that you're convicted, but if you're charged on one of these. And the Real Estate Commission has the right to suspend your license for one of these while you're awaiting trial. And when we look at the disciplinary actions on another night, we'll find some disciplinary actions of people who didn't let the Real Estate Commission know that they had a conviction of a charge. Okay, display of licenses. Now, again, in the old days, they used to print up your license on a bonded paper and they'd send them to us, and then we would have to hang them in the office, in the main office. You would hang everybody's license in the main office. Now they just do them electronically, and we print out all the offices on just regular paper, and then we are required to have all the licenses on display within the main office. So if you come to my office in Highland Park, which is the main office, Old Bridge is a branch office, but if you come to my office in Highland Park, we have a book that's in the, what we call the kitchen area, that has everybody's license in that book. And the purpose of that book and the purpose of those licenses is, somebody is looking for somebody who works for Remax, and there's a Remax on every third corner, it seems like. I don't like that, but there's a Remax on every third corner. And so if they want to come in and they want to identify somebody who did something bad, they can look through the books and they can look at the pictures and see, if they can remember the person. So our obligation is to have those licenses on public display. Now, if you have a branch office, and my Old Bridge office is my branch office, if you have a branch office, you still keep the licenses in the main office. What you keep in the branch office is a branch office license in a list of the people who are affiliated with that branch office. In the main office, you're going to keep your licenses of everybody who are in your company. You also are going to need to have a sign on both the branch office and the main office that say, in my case, Bruce Parker, broker of record, licensed real estate brokerage. So it identifies exactly what we are. And, I have my sign says Remax, Best Realty, but on the door, it says Bruce Parker, broker of record, Remax, Best Realty. That's so people know who is ultimately responsible. You are also required to keep pocket cards. And they used to print out pocket cards for you. And they were little things that were a little bit bigger than a credit card. And you were required to keep those in your wallet or your purse at all times. The reason I have a picture of a police officer here is in 30 years, I was asked to produce my pocket card 2 times. One time when I was parked in front of a house in Edison and the neighbors reported that I was some kind of a weirdo. And so the police came over and got me out of the car and asked for my ID. And I told them I was a real estate broker waiting to go to an appointment. And I didn't want to be early because I hated the seller. Another time was in Piscataway on Ross Hall Boulevard, where I set off the alarm on a very big, expensive house. And the police were there within minutes because I had set off the alarm that had been monitored. And all they wanted to see was my pocket card to prove I was a real estate agent. So your duty is to carry that pocket card with you at all times when you're a real estate agent. Now, when you get your license, and I started out at Century 21 JJ Law Firm with Barbara Irving and Ballard Hutkin as the owners of that. They taught me a lot. That was an office that had incredibly smart people in it. I didn't like working there after a while for a number of reasons, including I thought I could make more money if I opened my own office. So when you go to quit, you go into your office to quit, and you go in and talk to your broker. Don't be a jerk and quit by email or text. If you're going to quit, go in person and talk to your broker and say, listen, thank you very much for the opportunity to work here and learn as much as I did, but I think for my own personal growth, I would like to terminate my license here and try somewhere else. That broker has 5 days to terminate your license. They do not have to do it right away. They have 5 days to terminate your license. And the way they terminate your license is they go into the computer and they hit terminate, but they have 5 days to do it. And you cannot have your new office pick up your license and turn it on until your old office has released you. So again, the better you do the job at tendering your resignation, probably the quicker your old broker will terminate your license. And don't be a jerk and quit by text or email. Now, if your broker's going to fire you for doing something bad, you can count on the fact they're going to terminate your license immediately. But they have 5 days to terminate your license. And everybody will move around. Like I said, I started at Century 21, JJ Law Firm. I recommend you don't move around too much because you will lose some of your business base. And when I worked at Century 21 JJ Law Firm for 9 years, when I left, people would come to that office looking for me. And my ex-brokers would tell people that I had left and I was no longer in the business because they didn't want to pass business on to me. So when you move, there is a possibility that's going to happen. Don't think your ex-broker is going to be nice to you and send all the business that comes in to you. So again, you always want to quit and leave on very good circumstances, and you don't want to leave too often. You don't want to move too often. When you first get licensed, you are going to have to pay $10 into a guarantee fund. So it's going to cost you about $160 to get your license the first time. Part of it is this $10 going into the guarantee fund. What that $10 does is it provides a benefit for someone who has been financially injured by a real estate agent or broker. When you upgrade your license to broker, salesperson, or broker, you're going to have to pay an additional $20, one-time fees. So don't worry about paying it every year. It's a one-time fee. And what that does, it allows a person who has been injured financially because of a real estate broker or agent to collect a $20,000 benefit, if that's what their loss was, up to $20,000. They don't get $20,000 automatically. If their loss was $20,000, they get $20,000. If their loss was $10,000, they get $10,000. But before they can get that benefit, there's a process. They have to sue the broker or agent. They have to get a judgment for the money from the court. Then that broker or agent has to refuse to pay. And then once you've gone through that process, that's when you can go to the guarantee fund and you can ask for that benefit. So what they want you to do is try to collect through normal court procedures first before they tap the benefit. So that $10 you put in and the $20 brokers put in, from time to time, they'll have more money in that fund than they think is necessary, kind of factored into how many claims are being made. And when they have excess funds, they're allowed to use that excess funds for the education of real estate agents and brokers. And what they use those excess funds for is they have the real estate schools, directors and instructors, that's me, have to attend a full-day seminar with the Real Estate Commission once every 2 years. So they use that money to pay for that seminar. Places of business in New Jersey, we are required to have a brick and mortar location. You have to have a physical location. And the only place that your office cannot be is in an agent's home or a broker salesperson's home. You can have it in your own home if you're the broker. And Ellen Rosenbaum, who is a big Older Bridge broker for years, had her office in her garage, which she put took the garage door off and put a regular garage on it, in the Sayrewood South section of Old Bridge. Now she's in a regular commercial building, but for years she was in her own home. But you cannot have it in the home of an agent or in the home of a broker salesperson. And you do have to have a brick and mortar location, a physical location in New Jersey. The next thing is, before you start your work with a real estate broker, you have to have an employment agreement in place. And nowadays, with your Keller Williams, or if you're Remax, or if you're Century 21, the employment agreements might be 20 pages long. They really don't have to be that long, but you know, the bigger corporations get, the more they have to protect. But there are some essential elements in an employment agreement. And the essential elements are the amount of commission you're going to be paid. The broker has to promise to pay you within 10 days of receiving the check from closing. There has to be a termination agreement, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then there has to be a statement that says what is in writing in the contract takes priority over any oral agreements, because there's a lot of times there's misunderstandings. What's in writing takes priority. Now, the termination agreement is there because if you were to sign a contract for the sale of a property today, and we got a contract signed today on one of our properties, I earned my commission today. I earn my commission when you get a contract signed, but you do not get paid your commission until it closes. And that might be, in this case, 3 months from today. Now, what happens if you get a contract signed, and that's when you've earned your commission, and it's not going to close for 3 months, but you want to leave next month? Well, that's what the termination agreement deals with. How much you're going to get paid if you leave before something closes. And it is my advice, read your termination agreements when you go to sign up with a company. Because when you go to leave someday, and again, everybody leaves. I left Century 21 JJ Law Firm and opened my own Remax office. When you go to leave someday, you're going to want to know how much you're going to be penalized for leaving. And every office is different. So you're going to have to get your termination agreement and keep your contract. Now, your broker has to keep the employment agreement for 6 years on file. There's no requirement for you as a salesperson to do that, but you really want to keep your employment agreement on file, because that's going to tell you a lot of things if there's a dispute later on. All right. Next thing is advertising rebates to buyers. This is something that started about 5 years ago. It allows real estate salespeople and brokers, well, it only allows the broker to pay a rebate, but the salesperson can offer a rebate to be paid through the broker, and then it reduces their commission, so to speak. And so many companies now, like Redfin is one of the big ones, advertises all the time that if you use them to buy a house, then you'll get paid a rebate on the commission. So I've got to deal with a Redfin agent now, and that Redfin agent put a contract in on my listing at 215 Carsey, a multifamily in Highland Park, and they're going to give a rebate to the buyer. The buyer side agent is going to give a rebate to the buyer of 25% of their commission. So it's a $500,000 property. The commission is 2.5%. And so 2.5% of 500,000 is 12,500. And the agent for the buyer is going to give 25% of his commission to the buyer as a buyer's rebate. Now, if you're going to give a buyer's rebate, if you are indeed going to give a buyer's rebate, you have to enter into the buyer's rebate agreement at the beginning of your relationship. You have to sign a buyer brokerage contract, and all parties to the buyer rebate, have to be made aware. So when we signed the contract on 215 Carsey, because I'm the listing agent, we had to get a document from Redfin that says, please be aware that we are giving the buyer a rebate of 25% of the buy side of the commission. How that 25% affects the buyer's agent's commission, I don't know. How would he know? It would be in his employment agreement. I don't know what their business model is, but I do know that they're going to pay the buyer 25% of $12,500. If you're going to advertise a rebate, you have to have the offer for the advertising be in the same font as the terms and conditions. Now that's really sneaky, because they did that. They wrote the law that way because they wanted to make it really hard to advertise the rebates. Because now you can't have a big headline saying get a rebate, because you'd have to put all your terms and conditions in the same size font. Again, you know, it's something that's only 5 years old, and you may or may not have heard of it because people don't like, real estate brokerages don't like to talk about it because nobody likes to give a rebate. But Redfin, it's part of their business model. If you want to close a real estate office, if you have a real estate office that's open and you want to close it, there's some specific office closing procedures, and you can't really do it as quickly as you can open an office. You can open an office within a month. If you want to close an office, the first thing you have to do is you have to return all the licenses. So you have to go in and turn off everybody's licenses. You have to store all the paperwork for 6 years. You have to sign an affidavit that you have complied with all the regulations, and that you're going to store all the paperwork for 6 years. You're going to have to close out your trust accounts because you still might have other people's money in your trust accounts. So you as the broker may not be able to close the doors finally on your office until all the transactions are done and all the commissions are paid out. So it's a little more difficult to close an office. You have to de-identify, which means take all your signage down. And again, you know, your agents are going to go to somewhere else. As soon as you turn them off, they're going to have the ability to go and work, sign up, or get activated with someone else's license. Now, this is a very interesting part. This slide is the slide that benefits real estate agents, while every other slide is what we can't do, or the laws we have to obey. This is the slide. This is the slide that tells us how we're protected as agents and brokers. It says brokers may not sue for commissions unless they were licensed at all times during the transaction. And what that means is we can sue for commission if we were licensed at all times during the transaction, because sellers don't like to pay us commissions. And so many times we do have to sue for the commissions. The real estate commission will not get involved in commission disputes between licensees from competing offices. Remember, we talked about the realtors being the one who get involved in procuring cause disputes between competing offices. And the real estate commission will only get involved in disputes between brokers and the public, brokers and other brokers, and brokers and agents and their employee. So if you have agents in 2 different companies with a dispute, real estate commission will not get involved. That's where the realtors gets involved. Only the real estate commission gets involved in disputes between brokers and the public, brokers and other brokers, and brokers and agents and their employee. No net listings. Remember, a net listing is a listing that says anything you get above $100,000 you can keep for the commission. So no net listings in New Jersey. We also have rules about how we have to behave with other brokers. And when I have brokers class, and there's a brokers class that's got a couple of people in it now, just finishing up their office management section, 30 hours for office management. When they're in that office management section, we have to be very careful, because in the office management section, we make people prepare a business plan for opening their brokerage as part of the class. But we cannot have discussions about commissions, because that would actually be the definition of price fixing. So price fixing would be if I went to another broker and I said, hey, let's all charge 6% from now on. That's price fixing. That's against real estate commission rules, and it's actually against some of the anti-monopoly rules like the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Antitrust Act. So we have to make very, very certain that we don't get into a price fixing situation. Brokers are also ordered to cooperate, and cooperate means share information. So brokers must cooperate. So if I get a listing, I must share that information with other brokers. Doesn't mean I have to share commission. I don't have to share commission. There's an office out there, EXP, that does not share commission. If you're going to sell one of EXP's listing, you get 0% commission. So why would you bother to show it if you're going to get no commission? You have to get your commission from the buyer. Okay? So again, brokers must cooperate. It doesn't mean share commission. It means that share information. And how do we share the information? We share the information by putting things in the MLS. Once in a while, you will have a seller who does not want you to share the information. You will have a seller who does not want you to cooperate. when you have a seller that does not want you to cooperate, they have to sign a form called the Waiver of Broker Cooperation. And that form instructs their listing broker not to share the information. And that would mean they don't put it in the MLS. That would mean it doesn't get on Zillow. That would mean it doesn't get on Realtor.com. That would mean the only ones who know that house is for sale are agents within that brokerage. And the waiver of broker cooperation that the seller has to sign, you know, if you want to just boil it down to what it says, I'm stupid, but I insist you sign this. I insist you don't cooperate. Why do people do this? Sometimes they do it in very expensive neighborhoods because they don't want people to know that their house is for sale. Sometimes they do it for other reasons. I've only had a couple people do it in the entire time I've been in business in my office. I don't like it when it happens. So I try to discourage it whenever I can. You can't have discriminatory commission splits. And I told you about EXP offering 0% to the buy side. Well, it's very tempting for me to say, okay, I'm not going to offer any commission on my buy sides to EXP, but that would be a discriminatory commission split. So that is illegal. Also, we are allowed as a broker to pay commissions to other brokers, even though they're not licensed in New Jersey. And what does that mean? I got our listing today in a Cricket Court that is a referral from a broker in Minnesota. So when that closes, I am going to pay the broker in Minnesota a referral fee, and I'm allowed to do that as long as that broker in Minnesota has some kind of a real estate license in his jurisdiction. So again, this allows me to pay a commission to another broker in another state, even though they're not licensed in New Jersey. I can't pay a commission to an agent in another state. I can only pay a commission to a broker in another state. All right, this is going to be on your test 3 times. 3 different ways they're going to ask this question. But once you have your license, you may not accept any payment from anyone but your employing broker. So I have had people who have done a really good job in my office for someone and they want to give them extra money. Well, they can't just give it to the agent. They would actually have to give it to me, and then I would give it to the agent. And in your employment agreement, it's not an essential element in your employment agreement, but when you negotiate your employment agreement, you might want to make a clause in there that says any of those bonus type things, you get all that money. You don't have to split that with your broker, because the intent of the person who gave you the bonus was probably for you to have it all. So again, when you negotiate your employment agreement, you want to think about how they're going to handle something like a bonus. All right, so you may not accept any payment from anyone but your employing broker. You also may not pay anybody for any information or any real estate related services that require a license. What I mean by that is there is a term called bird dogging, B-I-R-D-D-O-G-G-I-N-D, bird dogging. And bird dogging would be where you would make an arrangement to give the mailman $1,000 every time he told you about a listing where somebody was going to move. And when it closed, you would give him a finder's fee, so to speak. That's illegal. That's illegal. You cannot pay anybody for anything. The only people who can pay you is your employing broker, and all commissions go and run through your broker. All the commissions go to your broker, and they get distributed to you based on what your employment agreement says. Now we're going to talk about advertising. And I do not believe the Real Estate Commission is properly enforcing their advertising regulations now. I think they are just overwhelmed with some other things that are going on, including Corona. And even before Corona, they weren't doing a great job. But let's talk about advertising. And the point of the advertising rules, again, sometimes on the test, you're going to have to be able to answer a question by understanding the concept and then thinking your way through the answer, instead of just having a rote memory of the answer. And ads are one of those things. The purpose of Real Estate Commission rules and regulations on ads is to let the public know with whom they are dealing, to make sure there's no advertising that's discriminatory or that is misleading or is bait and switch advertising. So you are not allowed to have what's called blind ads. Any ad in any type of advertising that you're going to use has to say the name of the real estate brokerage in it, so that the general public will know who is ultimately responsible. Whether it's an internet ad, or whether it's an ad in the newspaper, or whether it's an ad on Craigslist, or whether it's an ad in Facebook, it has to say the name of the brokerage so that the public will know who is ultimately responsible. Oh, substitute sponsor. Yep, I'll go over that in just a second. Well, actually, let's do that substitute sponsor first. So there's times when I am overwhelmed and I have so much work to do that I just don't have enough hours in the day. So I have appointed my wife, who is a broker salesperson, as my substitute sponsor. I have to file an affidavit with the Real Estate Commission and a power of attorney with the Real Estate Commission saying that she could do that. And that allows her to be able to turn licenses on and off, and allows her to be able to sign my employment agreement with my agents, and allows her to sign things that would typically require my signature. Now, I do it because I'm overwhelmed, but just think of Mr. Weichert, who owns all the Weichert offices. He can't possibly be responsible for signing all that, and so he has appointed someone as a substitute sponsor. They are the ones who are allowed to sign people's licenses, sign people's employment agreements, sign trust checks, sign operating account checks, and do operations regarding to the Real Estate Commission. That's what a substitute sponsor is. If I didn't have that, I would have to do everything myself. If Mr. Weichert didn't have that, he would have to do everything himself. All right, so let's go back to advertising. No blind ads. Ads must state the municipality. Doesn't need to state the price, doesn't need to state the salesperson's name. It just needs, even the address, the street address, it just needs to state the municipality. And the municipality is tough around here. I have a house listed in Franklin Township on 33 Route 518, but it has a Princeton mailing address. And I have to work very hard to have all my advertising show that it's a Franklin Township location, because people, when they see that Princeton mailing address, they want to buy it, but they're not going to buy it once they know that it is in, once they know that it's in Franklin Township. So ads must state the municipality. The only time an ad doesn't have to state a municipality if it is in print media and it is under a column that says Franklin Township. So if there was a column in the newspaper that's for Franklin Township, then I could put that house in there without saying the municipality, because the column heading would identify the municipality. When you're doing ads, the broker's name must be in larger font than the agent's. If you're doing business cards, the broker's name must be in larger font than the agent, again, to indicate who is ultimately responsible. Websites must have hot links to the broker's site, or each page must include the broker's information so that the public will know who is ultimately responsible. If you're going to advertise a home warranty, you'd have to state in the advertisement who's going to pay for it, because home warranties are available for all properties, but the question is who's paying for it. You cannot use a trade name or a business name unless you have the authority to do that. So you can't say you're Remax unless you're Remax. You can't say you're Keller Williams unless you're Keller Williams. You can't say you are a realtor unless you belong to the realtors. So you can't use a trade name or a designation. You can't say you're a CDPE or you're a senior SRES or you're an E-Pro unless you actually are one of those things. The next thing is you can't say something is sold until it's closed. You're not supposed to use words like pending, but you see pending all the time. Again, that's in violation of Real Estate Commission rules. You can say under contract, but not pending, because it's misleading. And you can't say it's sold until it's actually closed. No lotteries or games of chance. I used to go to like the home show in Edison every year. Runs in February or March every year. And I would get a table and I would put up pictures of all the houses I had for sale. And I bought a couple hundred of these kits that you could build sandcastles with. They were the molds of all the different castle parts. And you'd take them to the beach. They were really cool. They were manufactured in Israel. I got a really good deal on them. They were called Build the Beach. And then I would have a giant wheel, and you'd come up, and if you filled out a card with your information on it, you could spin the wheel and you could win a sandcastle building kit. And like the odds were 4-1. There's only 5 numbers on the wheel, so it was 4-1 that you would win. And the real estate commission sent me a cease and desist letter on that because I was using a game of chance to market. So again, you can't use a lottery or a game of chance to market. Safeguarding funds. So when you open a real estate brokerage, you have to have 2 bank accounts. You have to have an escrow account and an operating funds account. The rules say that you have to have the escrow account or the trust account in a New Jersey approved institution. So I'm going to stop on that for a second. I'm going to go back to the question. Who pays for the advertising lawn signs for a listed property? The salesperson or broker pay? Just wondering why some have broker salesperson's photo and others just have phone numbers. Okay, so a whole bunch of questions wrapped in one, and we'll kind of answer them. Depends. That's the answer I'm going to give you. It depends. So you would want to have a lawn sign on somebody's front lawn that has your name on it, including the brokers. Again, your name has to be in a smaller font than the brokers. It's one of the reasons, by the way, Keller Williams shortened its name or shortened its logo to KW. So you could put a big KW on a sign, and that font will be bigger than the agent's font, but the agent can still use a big font because now they have plenty of space because it only says KW, where it used to say Keller Williams and take up a lot of space. That's just a technique. But who pays for your signs is, in some offices, the office pays for the sign. Century 21, for instance, JJ Lawfer in Highland Park, the office paid for the signs. And if you wanted to hang a name writer on the signs, an extra sign that put your name on it, you could do that. Remax, almost everybody pays for their own signs, and they like to put their pictures on the signs. One of the reasons you put pictures on your signs is pictures, especially a head and shoulders picture of your face, is one of the most identifiable things that goes into your memory. And if you don't believe me, ask Facebook, who's now running facial recognition software, because your brain is wired to recognize faces. So again, many people run pictures. A lot of people get glamour shots. One of the things that always makes me laugh is the women who put pictures of their sign with their heads tilted sideways, with that smile on their face, because I don't know whether they're advertising for dates or they're advertising the real estate for sale. Nowadays, especially more than ever before, every buyer has been trained and conditioned to ask for the listing agent only. And that's not the best thing, because the listing agent may not be doing the best job for the buyer. But that's what everybody's been trained and conditioned for. So if you have a listing, you want as much information on there as possible that identifies you so that you can get the buyers to come to you, and then you have the potential to have both ends of the transaction, the listing end and the buy side end of the transaction. So again, it's going to be a preference for you what you want to put up there. I have an agent in my office who's very good at getting listings. He never wants his name or his picture on the listing signs. I have other agents in my office who have glamour shots, and their pictures are always on the sign, and their signs are bigger than everyone else's. There's no rules or regulations about how big the signs can be. And I do from time to time, if I get a listing that's on a major road or a highway, and I have the opportunity to put a giant sign up there, and I have one now on 1906 Park Avenue in South Plainfield. I have an 4 foot by 8 foot sign up, 4 foot by 8 foot sign up with my picture on it, because that's a main road, Park Avenue up there, and every day people drive by it and see my face up there smiling at them. So again, it's a preference as to what you're going to put up. You're going to have to put up what your broker allows you to put up. There might be rules and regulations in your office. Some municipalities don't allow signs. Some condo associations don't allow signs except for open houses. I have an agent in my office who just started a couple years ago, and he's already up to making $200,000 a year. And one of the techniques he did to really build a business fast is he got a bunch of open house signs made up with his name and his picture on them. And open house signs, since they're only up temporarily, have a different responsibility in terms of what's got to be on them. And what he would do is every time he would run an open house, he would put up 30 or 40 signs. Now that would take him all day on Sunday. But if you were to drive around Highland Park on a day he had an open house, every street you turned on would have his smiling little face there pointing towards where his open house would be. Not that people would drive to his open house, but now everybody would see his face and picture on a Sunday. And he has built a lot of business from doing that. So, you might want to go out and buy yourself a bunch of open house directional signs with your picture on them. And even if you're doing an open house for another agent in your office, you can still put those signs out with your pictures on them all over the place, again, to build awareness of your face and the fact that you're active in the market. Okay, so that was a long answer to your question about signs. I hope I answered everything. All right, so safeguarding funds. You have to have a trust account and an operating account. The trust account has to be in a New Jersey approved institution. What makes the institution approved is they sign a letter that says if you bounce a trust check, they will let the real estate commission know immediately. So in other words, you've taken in money for escrow for a good faith deposit. Now you're going to closing. You bring a check at closing made out to the seller. The seller goes home after closing and that check bounces. Then the bank has to let the real estate commission know. And the real estate commission will show up the next day and they're going to ask to see your trust account, your ledger. All right, so each broker must have a trust account in a New Jersey approved institution. Only a broker can have a trust account. A salesperson cannot have a trust account. The trust account has to be reconciled every 90 days. That's a higher level of responsibility than just balancing it. Every 90 days, you have to show all the money that was in it at the beginning of the month and how it got there, all of the money that went out during the month and who it went to, and what's left at the end of the month and what properties those deposits pertain to. You're not allowed to commingle. Commingle means you're not allowed to mix your money into the trust account. And the reason is, if you're mixing your money into the trust account, it means that you probably took some out, which is called conversion. So you're not allowed to commingle. You're not allowed to put any of your own money into the trust account, except to maintain minimum balances or bank fees. So I use Bank of America. They're $18 a month plus $3 a month. So I have to put $21 a month into my trust account for their fees. I'm allowed to do that, but I'm not allowed to put $1,000 or $2,000 into the trust account, because it probably means that you took money out at one point. And taking money out of your trust account to use it on your own, bills, is called conversion. And you're not allowed to have conversion. So no commingling, no conversion. Also, we must keep records, financial records, for 6 years. So I have to keep every single month's statement, every single canceled check for 6 years. And the real estate commission comes in and looks to see your financial records. We have a admin, her name is Darcy Kane, who does a fantastic job of this. And what really aggravates me is these banks every single month send you these trick notices to try to get you to stop paper delivery and only take online delivery of your statements, which means I would have to print them out every month. And you have to keep fighting to click off, no, I want the paper delivery every month, because they send it over already pre-filled out that I want only paperless delivery. And I don't want paperless delivery because I have to have them to show the real estate commission. All right, so you got to keep records for 6 years. Other licensees' responsibilities, you have to give somebody a copy of what they signed. Everybody has to get a copy of what they signed. You have to obey agency law. You have to have absolute fidelity to a principal. So if somebody is your client, then you owe them that duty of old car: obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, reasonable care and diligence. You have to submit all written offers immediately. Somebody gives you a written offer, you have to submit it immediately. Even if something is under contract, if you have a written offer, the real estate salesperson is required to submit it to the seller immediately. The seller can't sign it, but they need to be made aware of it. You have an obligation to recommend legal counsel when needed. And we make that happen by having the Opinion 26 form. The Opinion 26 form tells people that they have the right to an attorney, but they can close without an attorney if they choose to close without an attorney. So we recommend legal counsel when needed by giving them the Opinion 26 form, but all throughout the transaction, if somebody asks you a question that's a legal question, you should tell them to talk to a lawyer. For instance, they ask you, should I buy this as joint tenants with survivorship or tenants in common? Your response should be, that's a legal question. It's above my pay grade. Talk to your attorney. We also have to provide everybody with a copy of the Attorney General's Memorandum Against Discrimination when they sign a listing agreement. The Attorney General's Memorandum Against Discrimination when they sign a listing agreement. Now, if you're old-fashioned like me, that's easy. If you're old-fashioned like me, that's easy because I use the old-fashioned pre-printed listings. And on the back of the form that goes, because we have an obligation to give everybody a copy of what they signed, and on the back of the copy we give them is a pre-printed version of this. If you're a computer person and you're doing everything through DocuSign, you got to make sure you get that Attorney General's Memorandum Against Discrimination to the seller so they know that they're not allowed to discriminate. If you're going to participate in getting homeowners insurance for a particular buyer, you have to have written affirmation that the homeowner's policy is in effect 5 days before closing. And that makes sense because you don't want somebody to buy a home thinking they have homeowners insurance and have the home burned down. And again, weird things happen. I told you a couple of weeks ago, I had 420 Mansfield in Highland Park struck by lightning. So again, you all, and in the hurricane that we had other properties get hit by trees. So you always want to have a written affirmation for homeowners insurance. As a broker, I have to maintain transaction records for 6 years. And we just said a minute ago, financial records for 6 years. The transaction records that I do not have to keep are listings that failed to sell and offers that were not accepted. Those I have to keep for 6 months. But things that were accepted or listings that did sell, I have to keep those transaction records for 6 years. And up until just recently, the Real Estate Commission wanted you to have hard copies. They are just now allowing you to save everything in the cloud. And I already told you I'm old-fashioned, so I still have hard copies of everything stored. So in the basement of the main office in Highland Park, file cabinet after file cabinet after file cabinet of transactions going back 6 years. The other thing is, as real estate salespeople, we are only allowed to participate in filling out contracts on 1 to 4 family homes, single lots, condos, and co-ops. We are not allowed to fill in contracts on 5 family homes or 6 family homes. But on the ones we are allowed to fill in the blanks on, 1 to 4 family homes, single lots, condos, and co-ops, all of those contracts must have an attorney review clause. Now, I have a question. It's a good question, too. What are the main documents you need to save in the transaction records? So for a listing, you're going to need the consumer information statement where you kissed the people. Remember, you declared your representation to them with that CIS, so you're going to want to have a copy of the CIS. You're going to want to for sure have a copy of the listing agreement in the file. And if you have a copy of the listing agreement, you're going to have a copy of the Opinion 26. If you're saving it for 6 years because it's closed, you want to have a copy of the Opinion 26. And you want to have a copy of the contract if it closed, right? Because you will have had a contract. You will keep a copy of all the attorney review correspondence. And you should keep a copy of the home inspection if they had a home inspection, and the seller's disclosure if they had a seller's disclosure. Now, you don't necessarily need the home inspection. You also might want to keep a copy of your original CMA or your market analysis you did. You don't need to keep a copy of that. But here's the deal. When you get sued, anything you have that builds your favor in the case is worth having in that file. I have had people sue me to say that I priced their house wrong, and I've managed to open the file and there's my CMA, and where I priced it correctly, but they chose to not listen to me. And so, you know, I was very happy I had that in there. I have had people that have said that I didn't disclose to them some defect on the house. And we pull out the seller's disclosure, and there's a signed copy of them signing the seller's disclosure showing that defect on the house. So again, it is very, very important that you might want to keep those documents. Again, it makes for a very crowded file room, and it's also difficult to keep after people. Now, so again, on the listing side, you want to have the CIS, you want to have the listing agreement, you want to have the contract. If it was built before 1978, you want to have the lead disclosure. You want to have a copy of the check when it's closed and a copy of the closing statement, the CD. On the buy side, you want to have a copy of the consumer information statement saying how you're representing the buyer, a copy of the opinion 26, a copy of the contract, and if they did a home inspection, you'd probably want to have a copy of the home inspection, a copy of the check that was for that closing, and a copy of the CD that was for that closing. There's a lot of companies out there like Sky Slope. There's other companies that do transaction management where you can store all that stuff online, but you've got to depend that they're going to be in business for 6 years, and you've got to depend that you can get that stuff if it's needed. And again, it's expensive. Those services are, you know, not cheap. So I prefer to keep everything in files in the basement. Some newer, younger agents that are more tech savvy think I'm crazy, but that's the way I like to do it. Okay, so in the event you break any real estate commission rules, they have to give you a hearing. They give you 10 days notice for the hearing. You can bring your broker if you want. You can bring an attorney if you want. They're going to review what the complaints against you are and the disciplinary actions they can take against you, or they can suspend your license. If they suspend your license, you are going to get it back prior to its natural expiration. So if you got suspended today, you'd get it back before 6/30/2021. They can revoke your license. If they revoke your license, you are not going to get it back before it naturally would expire. So if you get revoked today, your license is gone, and no way you could get it back before 6/30/2021. You might not ever get it back, or you might have it revoked for 5 years, but no way you're going to get it back before its natural expiration of the current period. You can also be placed on probation. Maybe you've only done one thing wrong. It's the first time you ever did anything wrong. They'll place you on probation. They also have the ability to fine you up to $5,000 for your first offense and up to $10,000 for each subsequent offense. So one of the questions on the test is, if you've never done anything wrong and now you do 3 things wrong, what's your maximum fine? You've never done anything wrong. Now you've done 3 things wrong. What's your maximum fine? Well, for the first offense, your maximum is $5,000. For the second offense, it's $10,000 because that's a subsequent offense. And for your third offense, it's $10,000 because that's a subsequent offense. It's an ugly 10. So your maximum fine then would be $25,000. That would be your maximum fine. And it's very rare that the Real Estate Commission fines you the maximum fine. It's very rare that they fine you the maximum fine. Usually it's going to be something around $1,000. When you have a hearing, sometimes they'll offer you a fine without a finding. In other words, they won't find you guilty, but they'll say if you just pay a fine, and they'll give you a $500 fine. If you've ever done something wrong and you're at a hearing and they give you the opportunity to pay the $500 in lieu of a hearing and in lieu of a possible fine, pay the darn $500. Because if you don't take their offer, then they will have a hearing and they'll prosecute you as hard as they can. And the problem with being prosecuted is they might end up fining you the full $5,000. But even worse, now you're going to have to report it to your errors and omission carrier. And if you report it to your errors and omission carrier, your errors and omission insurance rate could go up. So if you're ever get a hearing for something you did wrong and they offer you a chance to just pay a fee and without a finding, take that opportunity to pay the fee without the finding. All right, if you get fined, remember we talked about the guarantee fund, extra money goes for education for real estate agents. Your fines go into the general treasury. So there is no incentive monetarily for the real estate commission to fine you. The fines go into the general treasury. The next thing we have to worry about is if the broker's license is revoked or suspended, then everybody who works in their office has their licenses suspended. But they're not suspended as a punishment. They are suspended until those agents can rehang their license with someone new. So the broker's license might be revoked. He can never get his license back. Your license would then be suspended, but it would be turned back on as soon as you could hang it with someone else.
Hey, Bruce.
Yes.
Why sometimes they call that inactive lease?
Say that again?
Why sometimes they call that inactive lease? When the broker's license is suspended, you the salesperson, they say your license is on non-active lease at this time.
So it means your license, it means you're the salesperson. It means your license is automatically released by the broker, right? So you're suspended, you can't do business, but your license has been released. And then the broker can go ahead, you can go ahead, the broker's license is suspended. You're suspended, but your license is released. That means you can just take it to another broker and turn it back on. This is exactly what we were saying.
Okay, thank you.
Some specific things that are prohibited is no blockbusting or panic peddling. Blockbusting or panic peddling is that when you ask somebody to list their house for sale by implying that a protected class is moving into the neighborhood. In the history of blockbusting, like I said, there's the Archie Bunker episode of All in the Family. When the person came in and said, you better sell your house because African Americans are moving into Queens. And Archie had to decide whether he was going to sell his house or not. Before, the implication was that values would go down if the African Americans moved in. And if you are a follower of All in the Family, you know that the family that was moving in was the Jeffersons, who then moved on up to the east side to a deluxe apartment in the sky. If you watch those shows back in the 70s. So no blockbusting. In order to prove we don't blockbust, we have to maintain a record of anything we mail or solicit. Anytime we do more than 3 solicitations on one block in 1 month. So whether you're mailing or emailing, a blast email or a blast text message, if it's more than 3 on one block in 1 month, you have to maintain records of what you did. Another word for blockbusting is panic peddling. Panic peddling. We're not allowed to do any steering, and that's where you bring people to a neighborhood because of they're in a protected class, or you don't show them a neighborhood because they're in a special protected class. And no redlining. Redlining is drawing a red line around a map and refusing to issue insurance in that neighborhood because of its makeup of a protected class. So no blockbusting, no steering, no redlining. Another thing that often comes up is puffing, P-U-F-F-I-N-G. Puffing is making exaggerated claims. Puffing is not a violation of real estate commission rules. It's not a good thing, but it's not a violation of real estate commission rules unless you're doing on a continuing basis after a cease and desist order. The next thing we want to talk about is residential referral services. And in a town like Hoboken, where it's very hard to find an apartment, it is typically the tenant who pays the commission for finding an apartment. And typically a tenant will walk into a residential referral service, and let's say they're looking for a $2,000 a month apartment in Hoboken. That'll probably get you a small closet. So you're looking for a $2,000 a month apartment in Hoboken. You are going to pay the real estate referral service the $2,000 up front. And they don't get to keep that money unless they find you an apartment, but they're going to take it from you up front because otherwise you wouldn't pay them. So when they take it from you up front, the $2,000, $25 can be used as an admin fee. The rest of the money is not earned until the service is provided. So if they don't find you an apartment, they would have to return that money. If they do find you an apartment, then they get to keep the money. Now, what they really do is they give you a list of apartments that are available, and you have to go knock on the door or call the owner. That list they give you, all the homes on that list or the apartments on that list have to be verified that they are available every day. And the owners of those apartments have to give permission to be included on that list. So those are residential referral services. In Middlesex County, it is usually the landlord who pays the commission. But in Hoboken and Jersey City, it's usually the tenant that pays the commission. So again, every market is slightly different. The next thing is the Real Estate Sales Full Disclosure Act. And there is a federal law that mirrors this law. This is the law that says if you are marketing properties that are in another state like in Arkansas, when we talked about this on the federal laws, we used the Eric Estrada example. Eric Estrada is selling properties that are in Arkansas. They have to be residential. There has to be 100 or more. And if they are, under the New Jersey law and the federal law, there has to be a New Jersey broker of record. You have to pay a fee to the state of New Jersey to register. There has to be a formal prospectus or a memorandum of offering. And another misspelling, it's not colanders, they're not cooking devices. There has to be a 7 calendar day period of rescission. So if you're up late at night and you sign a contract via DocuSign to buy one of those properties in Arkansas, you have 7 calendar days, including Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, to withdraw your offer, to rescind your contract. Okay, that's the Real Estate Sales Full Disclosure Act. Okay, let's see what time it is here. Good, we have plenty of time. We're going to try to do a switcheroo. If I miss you, if we goof it all up, we'll have to deal with that later. But for now, we are going to, here we go, get you into a different one on taxes. So just bear with me a minute. Okay, we might have hit this right on the head here. All right, if somebody could let me know, are we seeing real estate taxes and tax aspects of real estate ownership? Are we okay with that?
Yes, I could see it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Real estate taxes and tax aspects of real estate ownership. All right, thank you everybody for letting me know. One of the reasons that you buy real estate is you get a preferential tax treatment. Why? Because they're trying to get you to own a home. They feel it stabilizes communities, stabilizes your life. People who buy homes earlier in life achieve greater wealth than people who buy homes later in life. It's a very good indication of where you're going to end up the earlier you buy a home. The government is doing all kinds of things to promote home ownership. And so, again, very important, the effect that real estate has on taxes. Real estate taxes are often known as our most hated tax, even though by far income tax is worse. But everybody seems, especially in New Jersey, everybody hates their real estate taxes. It stems from a system put in place by William the Conqueror. Originally, it was called quit rent because all of the royalty owned all the property, and you would pay something called a quit rent if you were a private person owning property. So again, after expansion across the Atlantic, King James made sure the system traveled to the first settlers at Jamestown. The charter of the Virginia Company said the king would protect the lands in Jamestown in return for people, pay him a share of their profits. All land in the colony would be held in free and common socage. That's very important because only firstborn sons would inherit properties in England, and here in the New World, everybody could own property. So it was very important. That's why people came here, especially second-born sons. And it meant that land could be bought and sold in the colonies as long as the land continued to pay their taxes to the king. In New Jersey, we have a system called ad valorem. That's definitely a test question. Our system of real estate taxes is ad valorem. Ad valorem is Latin for by value. Your tax assessment, your assessed value, has two parts. It has the land value, and then it has the improvement value. That's the two parts. And those two added together are the total assessment. So ad valorem means by value. You have your land value plus your improvement value. And the two added together gives you your assessed value. So how do you know what your taxes are going to be? Well, you take your budget for your whole town. You've got your budget for your whole town. And that amount of money is achieved by the sum of all of the assessed values of all the real estate in the town. And that times the tax rate gives you your budget for your town. So let's think about this for a second. If you want to know what your tax rate is, how the town figures your tax rate, they take the sum of all the assessments and they take that as the denominator. They take that as the denominator from the budget. So they take the budget and they divide it by the sum. But what we're doing is manipulating the formula. So this is going to cancel out to zero. And then our rate is actually going to be the budget for the entire town divided by the sum of all the assessments in the town. And that gives us the tax rate for the town. And then that tax rate times your assessment gives you what you pay for taxes. That tax rate times the assessment gives you what you pay for taxes. So your assessment times your rate gives you your tax. That's how much you're going to pay. We have a thing called equalization. Most towns do not have the ability to correct your assessment every year. Assessments go off as time goes by. It's very expensive to reassess an entire town, so towns put it off. And now we have to have some kind of a calculation that is going to allow us to understand what our market value is based on our assessed value. And for instance, in Highland Park, we're going to see that in Highland Park, the ratio is, here's Highland Park Borough, the ratio is 0.4135. So it's 0.4135. So whatever you're assessed at in Highland Park, if you divide that by 0.4135, because this is a percentage, by the way, so it's 0.4135. If you divide your assessed value by 0.135 in Highland Park, it gives you your market value. So you can use all these numbers in different towns, and you can see that some of the towns have problems. Woodbridge, the ratio is 27%. South River, it's 28%. East Brunswick, it's 25%. And there is a very, very little known law that says anytime you fall below 50% for 5 consecutive years, you have to reassess your entire town within 5 years. An ex-Giant football player brought a suit against River Edge saying that the town was not reassessing fast enough, and they ordered 5 towns in New Jersey to reassess immediately. And then they put another 5 towns on a list that have to reassess within a certain time period, East Brunswick being one of them, South River being one of them, and Woodbridge being one of them. So those towns will all have to reassess within a certain time frame. Reassessment just happened in New Brunswick a year or two ago.
Bruce,
Yes.
can you go over the how you get the value of your home by like the one you just went over?
Yep.
Can you go over that
So
formula?
let's say your assessed value, what town do you live in?
Old Bridge?
So let's say you look at your tax assessment and it's $100,000. Again, a hard time writing with my mouse, but let's just say your assessment is $100,000. You look at your tax bill and you see your assessed value is $100,000. Now you would come to Old Bridge, and we can see the ratio right here is 4182. So we divide 100,000 by 0.4182. Again, I'm sorry, I don't have a touch screen here where I can just do it. So if we get 100,000 divided by 828, if we get 100,000 divided by 0.42, I'm sorry, 0.4182. That gives us a value. That means our actual value, our market value, would be 239,000. Would be 239,000. Okay, so people all the time who don't know this when they're a buyer, they come to me and they say, oh, this house is only assessed at 100,000 in Old Bridge. Why should I pay 239,000? Well, you have to use the equalization ratio to make that assessed value really count as the market value. Okay. We're going to get to something later on, and that's appealing people's taxes. And I will tell you for sure that next year, the tax appeal season, you'll be able to appeal taxes like crazy. You'll be able to get people's taxes reduced all over the place. And we'll talk about how you might do that. We'll get a whole class on that later on, and we'll touch on it a little bit tonight. Let's see if we have questions right now. I hope that answered your question well enough.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So if you think you're paying too much taxes, you have the ability to appeal your taxes. And again, we'll have a whole class on this another night, but now we're just touching on it. And the things you can appeal is an added or omitted assessment. And what that means is maybe you're in Old Bridge, and Old Bridge thinks you have a full finished basement and you don't have a full finished basement. You can make an appeal for that, and you can have that assessment that's going to be too high because they think you have a full finished basement reduced. Another thing is an incorrect assessment. Your house has been incorrectly assessed, and the opportunity to file for an incorrect assessment in Middlesex County is from January 1st to April 1st. This year was actually extended all the way to July because of COVID. But normally it's from January 1st until April 1st. And if you are going to appeal your assessment, say you're assessed at too high, you have to use closed sales. You can't point to your neighbor's house and say your neighbor's is only assessed at 99,000 and mine's assessed at 110. You can't do that. You have to look at closed sales, and if you're going to assess next January, you would use closed sales from October 1st of 2019 to September 30th, 2020. So what I said is that you'll have ample opportunity to get reductions this year, because in the first half of this year, when COVID's first hit, values dropped a little bit. So you'll be able to find closed comparables within this time frame that have an opportunity to prove you're assessed too high. When you're doing that tax appeal, you have to have 3 to 5 comparable sales as your evidence that you're going to fill out on the form. And you turn that in before April the 1st. And then you'll either get a stipulated settlement where the town, the municipality will agree that you're right and reduce your taxes. If you get a stipulated settlement, you'll get a 10% reduction. If you don't want to take the stipulated settlement, or they won't offer it to you, then you have a court case. And normally the court cases are in June and July. In order to have a court case, in order to win a tax appeal, the law says that you have to have a 15% discrepancy. So you have to have an error of 15%. If you're only off 5%, they don't have to do anything for you. You have to have a 15% discrepancy for them to do anything. Excuse me. So we have a whole technique on how to fill these out. A lot of people use an attorney to do it, but you don't need to. And again, we have a whole class on how to do this, which we'll get to on another night. You have special tax treatments. So you have a $250 deduction for senior citizens on their real estate taxes who are over 65 and have income under 10,000. You have a veterans deduction of $250. And if you have both spouses who are in the military, you get $250 for both. Certain disabled veterans get a 100% reduction in their taxes. So they can pay no real estate taxes if they have a disability that leaves them disabled, a certain percentage disabled, and they can get up to $100,000. I'm sorry, they can get up to a 100% reduction in their taxes. We also have the New Jersey Saver Rebate and a property tax reimbursement. Those are both plans the state of New Jersey has to give some sort of relief to our very high taxes in this state. We also have a senior citizen tax freeze in this state, where a senior citizen over a certain age can freeze their taxes so they can't go up more than a very small percentage. We also have a Farmland Assessment Act. The purpose of the Farmland Assessment Act is to encourage people to keep their farms instead of making them developments and building houses on them. The Farmland Assessment Act says that you have to have at least 6 acres on your property to have farmland assessment. 1 acre is where your house is, and then you have to have 5 acres of farmland. And the 5 acres of farmland have to produce agricultural income. So it has to be $500 a year of agricultural income. You have a lot of people who grow Christmas trees. The new thing now is to allow beekeepers to keep beehives on the property, and they will pay rent on having the beehives there, as long as it makes that $500 mark. Then their farm is assessed at a much lower value than their residential property. The farm is assessed at a much, much, much lower value than their residential property. If you have that farmland assessment, if you take advantage of the farmland assessment, if you go to sell your property to a developer and it's going to be taken away from farmland, there's a thing called rollback taxes. And that means that the taxes will be rolled back, and for the previous 2 years, you will be retroactively taxed as if the property was residential. So if you're going to sell a farm and the farmer doesn't know about this, you want to have somebody negotiate who's going to pay the rollback taxes. Typically, the developer will pay the rollback taxes. The next thing is exemptions. Certain kind of properties don't pay real estate taxes, like churches or government buildings, or perhaps Rutgers University. Think about how much tax collections New Brunswick loses because Rutgers University sits on so much of the land, or how many churches there are in New Brunswick. Sometimes those entities pay a fee in lieu of taxes, but again, you can have exemptions for certain kinds of uses on property that don't have to pay real estate taxes. And then we have special assessments. Special assessments are extra charges you get for things. So I owned a house on Catalpa Street in Perth Amboy. And when they were beautifying the waterfront, this was only a block off the waterfront, they put Belgian brick curbs all up and down the street. And they charged all the homeowners. The city charged all the homeowners for the Belgian brick curbs. That's a special assessment. Now they know that people can't necessarily pay for those curbs in 1 year. So they gave us 9 years to pay for the special assessments. When you're listing a house for sale, you might want to find out if there's any special assessments. Maybe they've only paid 2 out of 9 years and there's 7 years to go. You better find out if there is a special assessment so that you make sure you take care of it in the contract, and so that a buyer doesn't get surprised. Because if they get surprised and all of a sudden they have a special assessment they have to pay somewhere down the road, they may want to sue you. So those are special assessments. All right. Now we're going to talk about why in the world you would own real estate. And one of the reasons is it reduces the amount of taxes you're going to pay. So first we're going to talk about the house you live in. How does the IRS know what house you live in? Because you put it on your return, and you're going to deduct your mortgage interest up to $1 million loan, and you're going to deduct your real estate taxes up to that $10,000 level that Trump put in place, which he put in place specifically to punish states that didn't vote for him. That would be New Jersey, New York, and a couple other states that have very high property taxes. And again, that actually hurt values in New Jersey, because when you have $18,000 worth of taxes and you can only deduct $10,000, it's not as good of a benefit anymore. The next thing is discount points. When you buy a house, remember, points are prepaid interest. So when you buy a house, if you have that prepaid interest to buy, you can deduct that mortgage interest in that year that you bought it. However, you're only allowed to have the deduction for discount points if you buy a house. If you refinance and you have points, then you can't deduct them. Instead, the points can be expensed over the life of the loan. The next thing is casualty loss deductions. And I'm not picking on Donald Trump or Joe Biden or anybody, but one of the reasons Donald Trump does not want his tax returns revealed is that we used to have casualty loss deductions, or we still have casualty loss deductions, but we used to have a thing called the passive loss rules. And President Trump, at one point many years ago, showed $1 billion passive loss. And he's been able, because that was before the law was changed, it didn't allow passive losses. So he's been able to have all these losses against income for years. Because $1 billion is a lot of money. So if you watch, if they ever get the subpoena filled and they get to go over his taxes, you're going to see a lot of deductions for real estate related issues, because he was a real estate developer. So you're going to, and if those things were allowed, he should take them. Let's hope that people don't take more than they're allowed, because that's tax evasion. In your tax aspects of real estate ownership, you are not allowed any deductions for repairs and maintenance in your property that you live in your principal residence. So let's look at this for a minute. On my house that I live in, I pay about $1,000 a month in interest. That's $12,000 a year. I pay $8,000 in taxes. So $12,000 and $8,000 is $20,000. So I get to cut my income by $20,000. And if I'm in the 33% income tax bracket, cutting my income by $20,000 saves me $6,300 in taxes. So there is an advantage to owning your own home. People say this isn't fair to people who have to rent. But again, the government really is trying to encourage home ownership as a way of stabilizing the population, let's say. Okay. Next thing we have to worry about is capital gains. You have to pay capital gains taxes. Capital gains, you have to have owned the property for more than a year. That gives you long-term capital gains. And what capital gains is, what you sell it for, minus what you bought it for, less the cost of sale, your commission when you sold it, your points and your closing costs when you bought it, less any capital improvements. Capital improvements are things like a new furnace or a new roof, not painting and not landscaping, but capital improvements. And what you have less is capital gains. And the thing about capital gains is the rate of taxation on capital gains is much lower than on regular income. So it is much better to have capital gains rather than regular income, because the rate of taxes on capital gains is much lower than regular income. Now, we get a gift from the federal government. And I want to warn you also, this gift is going to be at risk because they're giving away so much money right now. We have to somehow increase revenue to the government. And this is one of the ways they're thinking of doing it. So right now, the first $250,000 of capital gains, if you're single, you don't have to pay taxes on. If you're married, the first $500,000 of capital gains, you don't have to pay taxes on. This is a big gift. And the way that you qualify for this is, was that property your principal primary residence for 2 of the previous 5 years? That's easy to fulfill. That means you could rent it for 3 years and then just live in it for 2, and you've qualified for this capital gains exemption. Okay? You know, the case that had the Defense of Marriage Act that overturned the ban on gay marriage on the federal level was all about capital gains exclusion, because it was 2 women that were married, and the wealthier woman passed away, and the owner of the house was in California, only got a $250,000 capital gains exclusion. And she said, well, I was married, I should get $500,000. And they said, well, the federal government doesn't recognize same-sex marriage, so you only get $250,000. And she took that case all the way to the Supreme Court, and they overturned the Defense of Marriage Act that was signed by Bill Clinton that made same-sex marriage illegal on a federal level. So again, you know, this is a big deal. This is a gift. This hasn't always been this way. I'm not going to confuse you about how it used to work, because it would just confuse you, but this is a gift. It has not always been this way. And we need to protect this into the future, okay? One of the reasons is we're going to have the greatest transfer of real estate property in the history of the United States. over the next 20 years as all the baby boomers age out or die, right? Baby boomers are all 60 now. So as they get to be 70, 80, 90, they're all going to be getting rid of their houses, whether they sell them or whether they die. And we want to make sure that we preserve the capital gains exclusion. Otherwise, you're not going to inherit the money. The IRS is going to get the money. All right, here is the worksheet for the capital gains exclusion. And again, it shows you it's $250,000 for a single person, $500,000 for a married couple. And it's for a widowed person, even though she's widowed and there's only one, or a widower, even though they're widowed or widowers, they still get the full $5,000 deduction as long as they sell the house within 2 years of the death of the spouse. So when you're on a listing appointment and somebody's husband has passed away and they say, I'm not sure if I want to sell my house now or in 5 years, you might say to them, hey, here's the deal. You're only going to get $250 capital gains exclusion unless you sell it within 2 years. Because if you sell it 5 years from now, you're further out than 2 years, which means you only get the $250.
Bruce,
Might be a reason for them to sell it.
when did this go into effect?
When did this go into effect?
Yes.
This rule was changed when Reagan was president. Prior to Reagan being president, there was a more complicated version of this, which I'm not going to tell you about because it will confuse you for the test. For right now, it's this one, 2 of the previous 5 years, $250 for a single person, $500,000 for a married couple. Okay. Every accountant knows about this. Now, remember we talked earlier when we did this section on closing statements that at a closing, there's a responsibility to let the IRS know there was a closing. And the reason there's a responsibility to let the IRS know there's a closing is then the IRS knows that you need to pay them capital gains tax. So again, this is the way you may be able to get a $500,000 exclusion, which capital gains is 20%, let's say, depending on your income level. So 20% of 500,000 is you're going to be writing a check to the IRS for $100,000. And I've got to tell you, when you write a check to the IRS for $100,000, you are sick. You just can't believe you're giving them that much money. So again, we want to make sure we protect that. Okay. Another benefit to try to encourage home ownership is if you are a first-time home buyer, you can take a $10,000 penalty-free withdrawal from an IRA. Now, if you have an IRA and you're not a first-time home buyer and you take money out, you have to pay a 10% penalty of the money you took out, plus you have to pay the taxes this year. So this saves you a lot of money to take a $10,000 penalty-free withdrawal from your IRA. Another benefit from the government. All right, so that was on the properties you lived in. Now we're going to talk about investment properties. So everything, whether it's cars or whether it's machinery, has a depreciation schedule with the IRS. So do real property, or so does real property. It's depreciated over its useful life. The depreciation schedule is 27.5 years for residential properties, and it's 39 years for non-residential income-producing properties. And again, I said when we finally see Trump's income tax returns, we're going to learn about the accelerated cost recovery system, passive loss rules, and casualty losses, because if you have really good accountants and really good attorneys and you really know the law, there's lots of strategies you can take to minimize your tax burden. And we'll find out whether he did it all according to laws or not. That's not up to me, but we'll find out. But again, these are some of the benefits of owning real property. Now let's talk about these for a second because there's a couple ramifications here. Remember we talked in the chapter on financing about the sale leaseback type of financing, and that's when a seller sells a property and becomes a tenant and the buyer of the property becomes the landlord. And one of the reasons you do that is maybe you've owned the property for all 39 years and you've completely used your depreciation allowance and now you no longer benefit from it. So you sell it and now your rent becomes an expense against income, right? And so that's one of the reasons people do sale leasebacks. So we have 39 years for residential income producing property, 27.5 years for residential property, and we no longer allow the accelerated recovery system. So all in all, they have an old saying, there's two things in life you have to do. And one is die and pay taxes. And the other is pay taxes. Nobody likes paying taxes. The original farmers that were in Virginia and in the southern colonies, when they were raising tobacco, big money crop, they quickly exhausted the nutrients in the land, and then they kept having to buy new land. And farmers all the way up until the 1930s had that problem. When you would grow a crop after a certain number of time, you would get rid of all the nutrients in the land, and you would have to over fertilize it in order to grow stuff, and it wouldn't have any profit. Well, a gentleman invented a way to get nitrogen from the air, because nitrogen is prevalent in the air. A gentleman who invented that also invented the gas that they used in the Nazi concentration camps. And even though this inventing getting nitrogen out of the air probably saved humanity, he was horrified that he invented the gas they used in the gas chambers in Germany, and he committed suicide. But being able to get the nutrients back in the land stopped having to keep rotating your crops or move around to different areas. But in the old days, when you had to sell your farm because it was burned out and then go buy another farm, it would really stink to have to pay capital gains every time you did that. And so they created a 1031 like-kind exchange. So as long as you sold your farm and bought another farm, you could defer your capital gains tax. You could defer your capital gains tax. And now this 1031 like-kind exchange applies to any income-producing property for any income-producing property. So you've got a factory that's an income-producing property. It's 39 years old. You bought it for $100,000. You're selling it for $1 million. First of all, you'd have to recapture all your depreciation, and then you'd have to pay the capital gains on it. So you would be paying capital gains probably on a little over $1 million, which means your capital gains tax would be $200,000, somewhere around there. And it hurts to write out that check for $200,000. So if you do a 1031 like-kind exchange, you're selling a $1 million property. If you buy a property that's equal or greater in value, and you do a 1031 exchange, you can defer your capital gains until you sell the replacement property. You got a 39-year-old factory, you sell it, you use the money to buy a new factory, and you don't have to pay the capital gains until you sell your new factory. And so it allows you to keep much more of your money in your pocket to get a return on. Very, very, very useful tool. If you're going to do a 1031 exchange, if you're doing a traditional 1031 exchange, you sell your relinquished property, it's called. After you sell your relinquished property, you have 45 days to name the replacement property. And the replacement property has to be equal or greater in value. You can actually name 3 replacement properties because maybe you can't find $1 million property. Maybe you can only find 3 $333,000 properties to get to the million. So you have to name the property within 45 days. Out of those properties you named, you have to close on them within 180 days. And both that 45 and that 180 come from the time that you closed on your relinquished property. So they're running together. So 45 days to name and 180 days to close. Okay? And if you do that, you then defer your capital gains until you sell the next building. And you could continue to do that forever. So again, that's a traditional 1031 like-kind exchange. You can also do a reverse exchange. A reverse exchange is when you buy the replacement property first, and then you sell your relinquished property. Again, you have the same 180 days, but that allows you to take the stress off yourself because you already know what property you're buying. Another kind of an exchange is an improvement exchange. And I did one of those in Highland Park. We had a property in Highland Park we were selling as part of a 1031 exchange. We got under contract for X amount of dollars. Let's say it was $300,000. They had to give some repair concessions that were about $25,000. That was less than his relinquished property sold for. So now he was going to have what's called boot, and taxes due on boot. And so instead of having the tax due on boot, what we did was we did a repair exchange where we put money into escrow for the repairs more than the amount that he necessitated to get rid of his boot. And he didn't have to then pay taxes on that boot, but he had to use the money to do the repairs. That's called an improvement exchange. And again, if you become well-versed in these, especially as, again, the baby boomers start selling off their stuff, they're going to want to do 1031 like kinds exchange because they're not going to want to pay capital gains. It makes a very good client. Because if you have a client who comes into your office and says, I just sold my relinquished property, and now I have 45 days to name, you know he's got to find a property within 45 days. So you know you've got somebody who's highly motivated and who's going to work in order to get a property. So again, very good client when they show up in your office. Your property that you're buying as a replacement property has to be equal or greater value. So let's say you sell a $100,000 property and you only buy a $90,000 property. That means $10,000 was uncovered. That $10,000 is called boot, and you have to pay the taxes on the boot. In order to do a 1031 exchange, you need a qualified intermediary, also called a facilitator. You do not get to take title to the new property immediately. There's a process by which your relinquished property is titled to the facilitator. The facilitator then transfers title to the purchaser, and you don't get your title to the replacement property. It also goes immediately, it goes through the facilitator. But the most important thing is you, as the seller, can never have constructive use of the money. So that means the money can never go into anything you can get your fingers on. That money can only go from your relinquished property to your replacement property without touching your account, your attorney's account, or go into an escrow in your name. It can only go through the qualified intermediary or the facilitator. When you're picking a qualified intermediary or facilitator, they're going to have your money in their accounts. So you'd better do some homework and research as to how well they are rated in terms of, are they AAA rated or 2A rated? Because you don't want to give your money to somebody who doesn't have a great history of making these things go through without problems. So that's a 1031 like-kind exchange, and you will run into these throughout your career, or if you have investment properties at some point. The smartest use of this 1031 reverse exchange, 1031 exchange, was the guy who sold me my building in South Amboy that burned down. And I told you the story about my building that burned down in South Amboy. He did a 1031 exchange on that building in South Amboy. Then he bought his replacement property on the beach at Myrtle Beach. Now, he was not allowed to live in that property because it would have to be a income producing property. So he put it for rent at Myrtle Beach. So it qualified for his 1031 exchange. And then he was able to carry that property as a rental for 2 years. And after 2 years, he was able to move in. And then when he moved in, he was able to qualify for 2 of the previous 5 years after 2 years of living there and get the $500,000 exemption on capital gains. And so he ended up never having to pay his capital gains. And never having to pay the capital gains really made him happy. So again, there are some very inventive ways that you can do this that are legal. You want to make sure that you get that property named within 45 days, and you want to make sure you get it closed within 180 days. Here's just a small example of how the 1031 exchange works. You're going to do the 1031 exchange, you're going to sell the property, you're going to identify the replacement, and you're going to buy the replacement. And remember, all that money has to go through the qualified intermediary, and you can never have constructive use of the money. All right, some extra things about New Jersey taxes, responsibilities you have. People always ask, do I have to pay sales tax? The answer is no. You do have to pay a realty transfer tax in New Jersey. That realty transfer tax on homes is a sliding scale. You'll have to look it up, or on the test, they're not going to make it calculated because it's a sliding scale. There is a $1 million tax for properties over a million or more. You have to pay a 1% fee. And again, on the normal realty transfer fee, the realty transfer tax, that is going to be a debit to the seller. The seller is going to pay the realty transfer fee. The $1 million fee can be paid by the buyer or can be paid by the seller. For you, you had better make sure in the contract, you make it clear who's paying it. So somebody doesn't get mad at you, because it's going to be $10,000 worth of taxes. We have these property tax rebates, the homestead benefit program, the senior freeze payment. All of these were done by governors at one time or another when they were running for their second term for election, and they wanted to pass some law. And they would do these things just before election day on their second term for election. So, you know, it's almost like clockwork when you watch them do that. We also have certain deductions on your 1040 on your federal return, such as mortgage interest, energy saving purchases, capital improvements, and a credit based on local real estate taxes paid. But again, that SALT, state and local tax deduction, is capped at $10,000 by Trump's tax law. Again, more information about the realty transfer fee. There is a special realty transfer fee for senior citizens. And again, they're talking about certain types of controlling interest, how they get applied to on the realty transfer fee. Now, here's the thing that is new, over only a year or two old, and it is very confusing and very upsetting. If you are selling your house in New Jersey and you are moving to another state, the state of New Jersey is going to keep 2% of the sales price, 2% of the sales price, and hold it. So I was at a interview the other day in Hillsborough. A woman is moving from New Jersey in Hillsborough. She's going to move in with her son in Kentucky, and neither of them had ever heard of this before. So when she closes, if she tells her attorney, who then tells with the closing statement and a document that you have to give to New Jersey, her forwarding address is Kentucky, on her $300,000 house, the state of New Jersey will keep $7,000. You know, it's frightening. Now, she would actually have the ability to get that $7,000 back if she filed a New Jersey return for her capital gains in New Jersey. But what happens is many times they forget to file that return, or they don't know that if they file the return, they can get the money back. And if they don't file the return within a certain period of time, that money as cheats to the state of New Jersey. How could she keep from having to pay that 2%? She could give a New Jersey forwarding address. She could say she's not moving to Kentucky. She's moving to her sister's house in Bridgewater. But again, you don't want to advise people to make false statements. But if she says she's going to move to Kentucky, they're going to withhold 2%. This whole homestead benefit and the senior freeze, there's certain eligibility requirements. And again, the homestead benefit comes to you automatically. Also on the senior freeze, there's eligibility and there's income requirements to be able to qualify for it. And if you're over the age for the senior freeze, it's something that's worth applying for. And I would strongly suggest you apply for it this year, because even though the federal government has a lot of money to make up because they're giving so much money away right now, all the state and municipal governments are dead broke. Their revenues are way down. And so they are going to have to raise, and all the expenses for the schools stuff that's going on, they are going to raise property taxes like crazy. So if you have the ability to get a senior freeze, get working on it now. Another way to defer or delay paying your capital gains is on installment sales. An installment sale is when the seller is going to hold a mortgage. If the seller is going to hold a mortgage, then the seller only has to pay capital gains on the amount of principal recovered. And the amount of principal recovered in the beginning of a loan is very small. So I've bought many properties with the seller holding the mortgage. No bank financing, me not paying for the properties, the seller holding the mortgage. And how do I talk people into doing that? First of all, I pay them a slightly higher interest rate than I would pay a bank, which is a much higher interest rate than they're going to get from their savings. And I remind them that the capital gains is only charged on the amount of principal recovered. So if they have an investment property they have an investment property in the building that burned down in South Amboy, where I told you where the guy did the technique on the 1031 exchange. He held a mortgage for me. And again, by holding the mortgage, and that wasn't that was a business. By holding the mortgage, he would only have taxes due on the amount of principal recovered eventually when he finished his 1031 exchange. All right, and we have a passive loss rule, which is not allowed anymore. And what I have heard and read is that one of the reasons that President Trump doesn't want to show his returns is he took a $1 billion passive loss, and he took some casualty losses. And nobody who's a good businessman wants it splashed all over the paper that he lost $1 billion somewhere. So again, I don't know that that's true, but I do know that they no longer allow passive losses. And that was a big reason people would buy real estate, so they would create a passive loss to really bring down their income so they'd have to pay less income taxes. A lot of what goes on in the financial world and in the world of real estate has to do with how much it keeps the tax burden lower. And again, if you have good accountants and good attorneys, there's lots of avenues you can look at. Now, this is the most hated tax of all taxes. This is the alternative minimum tax, and it is a second method of calculating federal income tax liability. So if you have high income, and by the way, up until recently, all the way from 1970s when this law was passed, up until recently, the high income was considered $100,000 a year in income. That's not really high income in New Jersey, $100,000 a year in income. And what the alternative minimum tax said is if you were filing an itemized return and you had at that point, $100,000 or more in income, and you had an itemized return that gave you a lot of deductions and a lot of credits, you might get your tax down to nothing. But the IRS said, no, if your income is $100,000 or more, you are automatically going to have a $28,000 tax bill. And my sister got stuck with this a couple of years. My sister is somebody who doesn't mind paying her taxes. And when she got stuck with it, she hated the government for a couple months because of this $28,000 taxes, where if they would have accepted all her itemized deductions, she would have had a much lower tax rate. So again,
I'm sorry, but that in effect means you make more money if you make $80,000 than if you do making $100,000.
That's exactly what it means. And $100,000 was not much money. And now, it was back in the 70s. What they have recently done is they have recently indexed that to much higher amounts. So they still have the alternative minimum tax, but it's no longer, the $100,000 no longer is the threshold. And again, there's a lot of things that we don't know about until my sister is a professor of economics at Cornell, and my sister didn't know about this. And when it happened to her, and she had to write a check to the IRS for $28,000, she used language I've never heard Cornell professors use before. So again, this is what I think is the most hated tax, and it's still on the books, but they've indexed the amount now to a much higher level. All right, so in this chapter, I included some keywords that we can review very quickly, and then we're done. We had a good class tonight, by the way. I had all my mental facilities here with me tonight. Ad valorem means we pay our real estate taxes by value. We pay our taxes based on our assessment times the tax rate. Our assessed valuation is made up of two parts, your improvement assessment and your land assessment. Your cost basis is what a property cost you minus your costs of purchasing, like if you had points or if you had application fees. Boot is the amount of money in a 1031 exchange that you do not cover, you do not get high enough amount on your replacement property. And so the amount uncovered is called boot. Capital gains tax is what you pay on your capital gains. And the definition of long-term capital gains is anything you held for more than a year. Real estate depreciates 27.5 years for residential, 39 years for income producing. Installment sales rule says that you don't have to pay capital gains tax except on the amount of principal recovered. You need a qualified intermediary or fiduciary to do a 1031 exchange. There's two things in life you have to do, and that's die and pay real property taxes. Real property taxes automatically jump to a senior lien, even if they're not recorded. And you can lose your property through a tax lien sale and foreclosure on that tax lien for not paying your taxes. A relinquished property, that's the property you sell when you're doing a 1031 exchange. A replacement property is the property you buy when you do a 1031 exchange. Special assessments are extra taxes they charge you for things they do to benefit your property. Where our office is on 8998 Route 18, they put in public sewers in order to facilitate Walmart being open. So they ran the public sewer from Route 9 to Walmart, which hadn't been there before. And all the properties along Spring Valley Road, they connected to the public sewer, and they charged them all a connection fee. Straight line depreciation, we use that now to depreciate real property, 27.5 years for residential, 39 years for investment, income producing property. That's not residential. We no longer use the accelerated version. And a tax sale is when you do not pay your real estate taxes on your house. The municipality has the right to auction off your taxes to an investor who then pays them, and they get to charge an interest rate. Usually it's 0% because they bid it down to 0, but then the second year it's at 18%. So their effective rate is 9%. And after a 2-year holding period, they can foreclose on your house for your unpaid taxes. If no investor bids at the tax sale and the municipality buys it back, that's called in rem. And then the municipality only has to hold it for 6 months before they foreclose. So again, a lot of words. Good chapter, a very important chapter, whether you get your real estate license or not, and a very important chapter when you're deciding who you're going to vote for. Because, you know, like Congressman Mahoney, she's a Democrat in New York, always vote for her because she is, after preserving all these benefits for homeowners, she's from Staten Island, she understands exactly how important it is. And there's a couple of Republicans in New Jersey who fought very hard against this $10,000 limit on state and local taxes, even though that, you know, that cost them because it was President Trump's law that passed it. Vote for them. Unfortunately, their names slip my mind right now. But in the debates that are sure to follow, listen for this kind of stuff, and you know, you'll kind of have now an understanding of what it all means. All right, that's a good class for tonight. Any questions? Questions going once? Questions going twice? Then I'll say good night.
I just want to say thank you. I just started yesterday, and I think you're great.
All right.
Bruce, I have one question.
Go ahead.
A friend of mine was looking for a house in Pennsylvania, and he offered the, you know, whatever exactly the seller was asking sale price, but then he was denied because they said, oh, they accepted the competitive bidder's price, but they didn't tell him anything. So do you know what that means?
It means that they got another offer higher.
Okay. Yeah, I was.
And that's happening all the time now. That is. I just had a property that I had under contract for $600,000, and my friend was the listing agent, and my friend called me this morning apologizing, and he said, Bruce, I hate to tell you this, but we're going to kill your offer because I just got an offer for $618,000, and they're going to kill your offer to take mine. So that happens all the time,
Okay, thanks.
Tell her I feel for her. I'm sorry. And this morning I was upset because that was going to mean, you know, a $600,000. That was going to mean an $18,000 commission for me. So again, it wasn't a nice thing. All right, guys, we will have a class tomorrow. It's going to be a little later. It's going to start probably at 7, and it won't be as long as tonight. It's not required. It's just an extra class. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, no class next Wednesday. No class next Wednesday.
Thanks, Bruce.
Right.
Have a
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Take care, Bruce.
Oy.